We're back for another video, and it's time to get creative. And so what we're going to do today, I've got my model Brian, and he's been growing his hair out for about 2 years. And so he's given me full license to go ahead and do a complete makeover, which I'm excited about. I enjoy these types of haircuts. It's more of a creative, artistic art project versus like kind of just a client in the salon. So I enjoy being creative. I enjoy creating art. I enjoy sculpting a new kind of shape. And so I think what we're going to do here is we're going to do something really cool looking, kind of tighter on the sides, tighter in the back. I'm not 100% sure what we're going to do with the length on the top. So what I'm going to do is actually section off the top and save it for last. So we'll address the sides in the back because I know exactly what I want to do there, and then kind of let the sides in the back dictate what I do to the top. So we're going to get Brian shampooed, and then we're going to section off the top and then get started on the haircut. Alright, so we just got Brian all shampooed, and as you can see, I've sectioned off the top. I did 2 sections. And the first section on this side, I actually used his natural part. So I found his natural part, his hair grows that way. I'm using that as one section because we're probably going to use the natural part as part of how we're going to transition into the top. However, on this side, I basically just took a section from the temple area straight back to the crown. And so now the top is sectioned away. We're going to save that for last, and what we're going to do is basically go ahead and start to remove the length through the sides and the back. So I'm going to take the very first section, which is going to be above the ear, and I'm going to cut as short as my fingers allow. I mentioned this in another previous video. Depending on how big of hands you have, so whether you're a female or a male, will dictate how short this first section will be. The reason why we're going to take it as short as our fingers can go is because we're going to go shorter than that anyway. So right now we're just removing the weight of the hair to get rid of all this length so we can work with a shorter style. And so I'm just going to take my knuckles, basically put them right up against his head, and that will be as short as my fingers will allow me to take the haircut. But if you have smaller fingers, let's say you're a female with smaller hands, you'll be able to get this distance a little bit shorter. But either way, it doesn't matter. We're going to take it down even shorter than our finger distance anyway. So it's really just about removing the bulk right now. So I took my first section above the ear, and then I'm working my way forward towards the face, and then from there I'm going to work backwards towards the occipital bone. You know, basically what I'm implementing right here is a technique, but like every technique, you cut the same technique on 20 different individuals, it's going to look a little bit different on each individual, because every individual has a different size shaped head, every individual has a different face. So it's very important that even though you know how to cut the technique, you can visually tailor that technique for that individual's face, his bone structure, or her face or bone structure. So right now it's just removing the weight, removing the length, so we can get to the scissor-over-comb part, which of course is where we're going to really fine-tune this particular haircut to the bone structure of this model today. Opposed to a model that I may have done another day. The scissor-over-comb that we'll address on somebody else could be a little bit different because, as I mentioned before, everybody's face, everybody's bone structure is a little different. So now, I went forward from the ear to the temple, and now I'm going to go from the ear to the back. And as we get here to the back, I'm still putting my fingers as tight as I can against his scalp so that we can get this hair as short as possible. But I'm going to start to over-direct the hair in the back a little bit towards the front so that we can leave it a tiny bit longer, just because we want to make sure that we don't create a flat shape here. So oftentimes I'll see individuals, they'll have a haircut that's very short here, which creates a flat shape. And we want to avoid it being flat there. The head is designed to be more round. It's a more flattering shape right through here. We do typically cut square shapes in men. It's not like set in stone, but usually a square shape's a more masculine shape, where a round shape's more feminine. So oftentimes we'll do a more rounder shape on a woman, more square shape on a man. But regardless if we're going square or round, we don't want flat right here. That's not square or round, that's flat. And so we're gonna leave a little tiny bit of length here. We can always take that length down shorter if it's too long, but of course if we whack it off right from the beginning, you can't put the hair back on. So that's why we'll do some over direction, keep that hair a little bit longer to make sure that we have enough hair to basically create that shape at the top of the crown so that the head has a flattering shape versus a flat shape. So right here, as you can see, is where I'm starting to turn the corner, and this is where I'm starting to over direct. You can see the hair's being combed that way. And the reason for that, again, is to keep it a tiny bit longer than we did over here. And once we get it all done, we'll be able to take it shorter if we need to, at that point, we'll be visually looking at it to make that decision. So I'm going to be visually looking at the hair and deciding if that's a good shape or too flat of a shape, or too round of a shape or too square of a shape, and adjusting it at that particular time. So I'm now just going to work my way to the center back, and then we'll do the other side and basically do the exact same thing on the other side. We'll start first section right above the ear. You can kind of see right here the weight. It's starting to get a little bit longer, shorter here, a little bit longer there. So I'm going to do a couple more sections just till we get to the center back of the head, and then we'll carry on the other side. Down here at the bottom of the hairline, closest to the neck, I'm really sticking my fingers right up against the scalp because this is all going to be short. We're really over directing to keep the length here at the crown. If you're not careful, and I see it all the time, I'll be at the grocery store, I'll be at Costco, and I'll be standing in line, and the gentleman or woman behind me who has a shorter haircut, the person who cut their hair didn't compensate for the roundness of the crown here, and it's completely flat. And the reason you don't want flat, one is flat's not flattering, but the main reason, if this is flat, and we cut this hair down here at the bottom short, so this is short, gradually longer, and then this is flat right here, you create this triangle shape, which basically protrudes and accentuates the occipital bone. We want to hide the occipital bone. We want to soften the occipital bone visually. We don't want to accentuate it. It's not a flattering shape on a head. So that's why we want to create more of a round shape like this versus a flat shape like that. Okay, so in case anyone's wondering, why would we not want it flat at the top? That's the primary reason. The flatter you do the top, the more you accentuate the occipital bone, which gives a unflattering, unique shape at the back of the head. I have definitely seen people's occipital bone really protrude outward. All right, now we're here at the center back, slightly over directing, cutting this off, and then this is the last section on this side, and then we'll start on the other side, working our way from over the ear to the front of the face, and then over the ear to the back. So this side is where the part is. And what we want to make sure is we create a nice square shape here. We talked about just a second ago, typically male shapes are more flattering square. It's a more masculine shape, and round shapes are more feminine. So what I want to be careful to do is not angle my fingers in a way that's going to create a rounder shape. And it's not the, it's not the end all be all. I mean, there are exceptions to the rule. But in general, for men, we want to create more of a square shape, which means I have to hold my fingers very square. So when I pull my fingers out, it's going to be a perfectly straight line from ceiling to floor versus an angle, something like that or something like that even, where it's going to be too heavy or too round, depending on how you hold your fingers. So not only is the section and the technique important, but how you hold your fingers is absolutely critical, just as well as the technique. If you hold your fingers accidentally slightly angled toward the top of the head, you're now creating a round shape. And in this particular case, I want a more of a square shape. And then again, if you hold it accidentally this way, you're creating more of a round graduated shape. And again, what I want is a perfectly square line right there. So as I take this first section, and I'm going to put my knuckles again flat against his scalp because I want it to be short, I'm making sure that my fingers are going in a perfectly vertical line from floor to ceiling with no angle. And that's how I'm going to make sure I have a square shape on this side. Okay, so there's the first section. And now we're going to work our way to the next section for this, which is the section in front. Same thing, put my fingers flat against his scalp and then work my way up towards the part. Again, keeping my fingers totally square. Once we start getting towards the scissor-over-comb part of the haircut, that's when we can start to really fine-tune the shape for that person's individual face. And that's why I say it's not always the case where you're always going to do square on a man and always do round on a woman. Sometimes, based off of bone structure, based off of head shape, you're going to possibly do, break that rule and do more round for a man and more square for a woman if it calls for it. If their bone structure on that particular person's face calls for that, then we can always alter it later. You don't want to alter it from your first section though, because you can't put that hair back if it doesn't look good. So that's why we always want to kind of leave it to do the technique first, leave the hair in more of a traditional shape, which in this case will be square, square for a man, and then we can alter it if need be as we go further. Okay, so now I've cut this section from the front of the ear to the face, to the temple, and now I'm working from the top of the ear to the center back. So I'm working down, and I'm starting to, like on the other side, over direct the hair forward so that I start to leave it a little bit longer. And again, we can always take it shorter, so we could do that later, but for now I want to make sure that we have enough hair to work with in case I want to leave it a little bit longer for particular bone structure. And we'll only know that really once we start to remove all of this hair and kind of get a really good look at it. So the next section I'm going to take from top to bottom, and I'm going to over direct it slightly forward. And work my way down towards the neck. As I'm getting closer to his neck, I'm over directing less and basically putting my knuckles right up against his scalp, because again, this is going to be really short. We're going to scissor overcomb this hairline nice and short. It's really here that I want to be careful with the length. So, got a couple sections left. And again, just over directing this hair slightly over towards the front. And then as I work my way down, over directing a little less. And then from the occipital bone down, I'm not over directing at all. I just want that hair nice and tight, nice and short. So my fingers are just straight on his scalp with no over direction. Okay, got a couple more sections here to go. And slightly over directing here at the top. And then again, less over direction as I work my way down. And then pretty much no over direction here at the bottom. And then this last section, I'm going to go ahead and just comb that over to the left to over direct it a little bit. And working my way down here at the very bottom, eliminating all of this hair. Okay, so now we've basically over directed both of these sides so that we leave this length here in the middle. And we're gonna take this length a little bit shorter, but again, it's better to do it in phases. Cutting hair, as I've mentioned before in different videos, is a lot like sculpting a statue, whether you use stone or wood. Nobody just creates a shape of a statue from a piece of wood by, carving the face in one stroke, carving the legs in another stroke, carving the tail of an animal in another stroke. It's tiny little pieces that come off that create that statue. Same thing here. We're going to take tiny little pieces off of these. Our material happens to be hair. It's not wood or marble or anything like that. but we still have to take tiny little pieces until the shape evolves into what we want to see. So now that we've removed that weight, we can start to kind of see the head shape. Prior to starting, one of the things that I didn't share in the video is I actually felt Brian's occipital bone. And the reason I did that is because different people have different size occipital bones. Some people's occipital bone really protrudes outward. And if that's the case, then I would have wanted to really leave it much longer here so that's a softer shape to eliminate and kind of diffuse the occipital bone. Other people don't have smaller occipital bones. Brian's occipital bone is not one that sticks really far out, so I was able to take that in nice and tight with my fingers. So something to think about before you start whacking someone's hair off. That'll also dictate how much you should over-direct. In this particular case, I didn't have to over-direct a lot because I wasn't concerned with the occipital bone that was going to protrude out the back. So now we're going to go ahead and start the scissor-over-comb process. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll comb the hair forward on the hairline. So here's the hairline, and I'm just going to take a comb and comb it forward. Then I'm going to take the comb and hold the hair in place, and then just follow the hairline. I can see the hairline underneath, so I'm using the hairline as my guide. And I'm just cutting the hair so that if the hair was to, for whatever reason, the wind was to blow and it blew his hair forward, it's not going to pass his hairline. So it's going to always have a nice, clean, tailored hairline. So basically just going to comb that forward and get rid of any hair that's kind of coming past it. Then I'm going to go ahead and start addressing the scissor-over-comb. I'm going to take this type here, so I'm going to go ahead and start putting my comb, pull down the ear so I can get right there behind the ear. And then I'm going to whack this hair away because I know I don't want that hair. And then from here I'm going to start to do the scissor-over-comb process by slowly just lifting the hair, lifting the comb, having the scissors follow behind it. And this is where it's going to become visual now. This is where I'm going to decide how short basically am I going to want to see this haircut. So it's important as we do the scissor-over-comb, we constantly check in the mirror or take a step back and assess and look to see how short it looks and if it looks good or if we need to go shorter or if it's a good length where it is. And with scissor-over-comb, the best way to address it is in panels. So again, the most important length is the length that you create in this panel right above the ear because that is the widest part of the head. From there, once we've established that perfect length, when they look into a mirror, this is the part that they're going to see as their side because this being the furthest part out is going to represent the side when they look into a mirror. From there, then we can address forward. So I like to again do my scissor-over-comb right above the ear first until I find a nice length that I like, and then I'll scissor-over-comb forward, and then again I'll start to scissor-over-comb back towards the occipital bone, just exactly the same way we did the sections when we first cut the hair. So on that note, I'm going to start removing some of this hair, working forward. And one of the things that I'm going to want to also get in my hand is a barbering comb. I like to hold a couple combs at the same time so that I can switch combs during the scissor-over-comb process. So right here above the ear, at the bottom of the hairline, I'm going to do it nice and tight. So I need a fine-tooth comb to address this hair. And then as I work up higher, I can switch to a wider tooth comb. So I like to hold a couple combs, maybe 2 or 3 combs, right here so I can rotate them versus putting them on my station, which means I have to drop one comb, grab another comb. It saves a little time. It's not like it saves a ton of time, but it does save a little time, and every second helps when you're running behind in the salon, so I find it just easier to hold a couple combs like that. Okay, so now that I've established this length above the ear, I'm going to start to blend the front of the ear's hair to make sure that looks good. And then we're going to turn Brian towards the mirror so we can look at it and see if that's a good length visually here in a second. Okay, so now I just want to see how this length is coming along. And so I'm starting to like the shape that we're creating. If you can see through your clients, you know, when you look in front of the mirror, when you look at the front of the mirror and your client's looking straight forward, and you see the hairline that represents the side, it's this bone that's sticking the furthest out that's representing that wall. As it starts to taper in, that's not the part that creates the wall, that's the part that kind of starts to taper in towards his face. So this is super important to make sure you get it a good length. Okay, so I'm going to just turn him back simply so that you guys can see on the camera. And we're going to clean this up a little bit more now that I'm starting to like the length that's coming along. So now I'm just coming down into the sideburn with the scissor-over-comb. Obviously we've got to blend it in now that we've taken the hair above the sideburn up. And make sure it's blended with the rest of the haircut. And then once we do this, we'll start to work the scissor-over-comb going backwards this way behind the ear. So we've got it now going in front of the ear, taking a look at it, making sure it looks nice and smooth, got a nice smooth outline, no bumps. And then we're going to start working our way back. And this hair that we over-directed to keep a little bit longer, this is where now we get the opportunity to take it a little bit shorter if we'd like. And I know I'm going to want to as we start to work our way back here. And on this side of the head, if you're right-handed and you hold the scissors in your right hand, scissor overcombing this section behind the ear is difficult because the ear is an obstacle there, and obviously it's hard to do that. So one thing that you want to do is turn your hand upside down, and now you can scissor over comb behind the ear without having to worry about the ear being an obstacle. Of course, you want to be really careful because you're working with the blade right behind the ear, so you want to have a steady hand as you're going through and doing this, that you don't accidentally cut a chunk out of somebody's ear. But that's a great way to scissor over comb behind somebody's ear if you're right-handed. And if you're left-handed, you know, you're going to do the same thing but on the other side. So right here I'm just basically taking my hand, turning it upside down so I can scissor over comb this section that's hard to get to if my hand was in its proper position. So I'm going to continue to go all the way around and working my way to the center back. Again, working in panels, right? So panel number 1, panel number 2, panel number 3, and usually that's the best way to stay in control of your scissor over comb. Scissor over comb is a technique that you can definitely find yourself all over the place. That's why it's really a good idea to work in panels. Get the panel that you're working on to look good and then move to the next panel before you carry on. So make sure each panel that you're addressing looks good at that time, and then you could carry to the next panel, and that will definitely help keep you organized in your scissor over comb. I've seen a lot of people when I've taught scissor over comb, they start getting everywhere. They start going here, 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 and then they kind of get lost and they see all the pockets of weight that they left, and it becomes a little overwhelming for them to get the haircut looking good. So I usually suggest making sure you work in panels and don't move to the next panel until the panel you're working on looks good. So now we're here at the center back, and we're going to then do the exact same thing on this side and work our way that way. That's one option, but what I like to do is actually, now that I've got a flow, I like working from right all the way to left. So I'm going to keep going. Some people work from right to the center, left to the center. My personal preference is I like to just do it all in one smooth motion from left to right. And it's, excuse me, right to left, sorry about that. And for me, it's always right to left. I never go left to right, it's just a personal preference. I think I flow better that way. It's probably because I'm right-handed and it's easier to start over there with my hand versus over here since I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you might probably start better off on the left side and work your way to the right side. Okay, so now, just going in and scissor overcombing this hair. Taking it, we're going to take it nice and tight right here at the bottom Again, as short as we can get that. And then I'll be using the clippers to get the neck hair here in a second. We're just going to go all the way around first though. And kind of just carrying on doing the same thing on this side that we did on that side. Now, again, remember this is the side that where the part is. So we got to make sure that this side looks good even before we bring down the top. On that side, we're going to figure out what we're going to do later, right? We're leaving this top to for the last, and then we'll kind of blend it in how we want. Maybe leave some of it disconnected. I'm not sure yet. We'll kind of wait. But this side, the part's here, so we have to make sure this side looks good no matter what, because none of that hair on the top is going to come this way. Okay, so basically, you can see that we're working this shape here on a profile, so nice clean square shape through here. Want to make sure that this side looks good the way it is, because this hair on top is not going to go this way, it's going to go that way. So we can do something more creative here, but this is definitely where his natural part is. So I want to work with that natural part because that's going to be an easy part for Brian to find all of the time. Your natural part just parts there naturally. Where if some people were to cut a haircut in an unnatural part, then that individual has to find that unnatural part every time he styles his hair, he or she. So usually it's best to find the natural part, style your hair there. So on that particular note, that's why I want to make sure this looks good, because none of this hair that we're saving on the top is going to come this way. So this side has to look perfect. This side we can get creative because we're going to leave this a little bit longer. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to blend it or connect it to this side, but we'll get to that when that time comes. So now I'm going to kind of just take the clipper, go around his hairline, clean it up, and then we'll keep addressing the scissor-over-comb here. But before I do that, I just want to get this neck hair off, kind of get the hair around his ear nice and clean. So just going to take the clipper, do the same exact thing that I did with the scissors. I pull the hair forward to his hairline, and that way I can create a nice clean hairline on this side. And basically address the hair here in the sideburns so that it blends in now that we've taken this shorter. Okay, basically now making sure it blends in with his other facial hair so he doesn't have any unusual hard kind of lines in his haircut. And just using the clippers, doing more of a clipper over comb than a scissor over comb. Okay, and then basically pulling down the ear, making sure the hair that's around the ear is nice and clean. One of the things that I like to do is with my left hand, because I'm right-handed and I hold the clippers in my right hand, is I'll pull the ear down and then I'll clean this up here. But to stay steady, I'll take the clipper and I rest it on this finger. If you don't rest it on your finger and you've got a shaky hand, you could create a shaky outline. So what I like to do is I take the clipper, rest it on that finger for stable, to make my hand a little bit more stable, and then just kind of curve around, creating a nice clean line right here. Kind of just a nice little tip or trick if you've got more of a shaky hand. And then basically taking this hair, combing it forward. I'm basically using what's called the peel the apple technique, where I pull his ear down with my thumb and then I peel the apple, basically by combing the hair forward. So with my left hand I can get the ear out of the way, comb the hair forward, and then create a nice clean outline back here. And then working my way down into the neck hair. You can see everybody's neck hair grows different. So Brian's right here grows off, in this particular case, parts this way, parts this way. He's got a couple cowlicks, which he actually told me about before we started. But then it's a higher hairline here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this higher hairline as my guide. So rather than going ahead and whacking this hair off, I'm going to start here to create a guide, which basically is going to be the highest point of the hairline. And then from there I'm going to work my way around to blend it and match it with these sides. So basically I'm combing the hair down, and with the clipper I'm kind of creating a graduated edge. I'm just kind of flicking out. I myself like a graduated edge versus a hard line. So in this particular case, I'm kind of just coming up, bringing the clippers up to the comb and then flicking outwards to eliminate a hard line. And then what I'm going to do is actually scissor over comb that line even a little bit more, just to make it a little less of a hard line. Okay, so now just kind of going through, getting the rest of the neck hairs nice and clean. And I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. So once we get all this neck hair clean, same thing here. We've got our guide, which was the highest point of his hairline, combing this hair down and then flicking out, basically creating a softer line versus just going in there and edging a line. I'm just, personal taste for me, I don't really like hard lines. I like more of a blended natural line. Okay, and then we can just go ahead and clean the hair off the neck over here. Okay, and then kind of clipper over comb right here just at the bottom. Again, we could scissor over comb it as well, just to soften the line up a little bit more, simply because I like a natural hairline versus a hard hairline, like a hard line. Okay, now just working my way again all the way around the hairline. Here I can hold his ear down and then basically just work around the hairline. Same thing you could also do the peel the apple, where you hold the ear with the thumb, comb the hair down, and then basically just kind of take that little edge off. And once we remove this hair, we can really finish up the scissor over comb to make sure it looks nice and good. So now just kind of cleaning up the sideburn, making it sure it matches and blends. And once I get this sideburn all blended in, we'll do a little bit more scissor over comb just to make sure everything is on point, and then we'll drop the top hair down and blend that in. But I want to be sure that I'm 100% done with the sides and back before I do that. Okay, so now that that's all cleaned up, we're going to go through and make sure that the scissor over comb looks 100% before we drop down the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and really sharpen up the scissor over comb a little bit more, and then we get to drop down the top and kind of decide what we're going to do there. So let's just carry on with the scissor over comb. Alright, so as you can see, we've now taken the sides and back nice and tight, scissor over comb them to a shape that I'm happy with. So we're going to drop down the top and start to figure out what we're going to do with it. I definitely want to blend this in at least from the ear back. I may leave it disconnected from the ear forward because we're going to dress it backwards anyway. I'm not 100% sure yet, but the first thing I'm going to do, being that I do know I want to disconnect at least from the ear back, is I'm going to go ahead and start taking sections to be able to do that. So the first section I'm going to take is kind of a diagonal section right here at the crown, and I'm going to comb this hair and blend it in with the hair that's underneath. So there's the underneath, that's my guide. And basically I'm going to over direct it a little bit, again just to keep it a little on the longer side. We can always take it shorter if we need to. And just cutting a nice vertical line here, taking a peek at that. Then we're going to do the next section, kind of do a diagonal section again, and I'm just going to over direct this back to this back line again, slightly over directing so that we can keep this section right here longer. And then we'll start to take more vertical sections as we get towards the front. And actually what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start doing that now. I'm going to take the next section right here above the ear. So I discussed how I know I want to, at least from the ear back, blend that in and disconnect, or keep it connected. So I'm going to take a section right here, comb this hair forward. We're going to save that for last. Bring this section down, and I'm going to just blend this top part with this underneath. So the underneath is my guide, and I'm just going to cut a nice vertical line, comb that down, kind of see how it lays. Do the next section here, again push that forward, and we'll do the next section right here. Same thing, nice vertical line. And we're going to have a corner here, so we might have to go through and kind of take that corner off, but we'll do that once this hair is dry. That way we can get a good idea of how that corner is laying. Sometimes it's good to leave the corner. Sometimes you need that corner, that extra weight. But most of the time you want to kind of take that corner off so it doesn't look like such a hard line. Okay, and then basically just working our way around. Okay, and so now you can see we've got this all blended here from the back. And we're probably going to go through and take that corner out. So now I need to decide what we want to do here. Well, I know for sure it's definitely too long. So I've got to decide if I want to blend it or not blend it. But I do know I want to over-direct it back a little bit. So I'm going to over-direct it back to keep it a little bit longer. And we'll take a little at a time off. So I'm pulling it all the way back to just where the head starts to round to the back. And I'm going to go ahead and address this. This will still leave the front longer, but which we still may cut, but it'll get rid of a lot of that hair. So now what I think I'm going to do is actually I'm going to start blow drying it, and we're going to finish the cut dry. So I want to get an idea of how heavy the hair is once it starts to dry. Once that is all dry, we'll know exactly how short we want to go from there at that point on. So I'm going to blow dry the hair now, and then we will finish it after it's all dry. So now I've just gone ahead and blew dry the hair, and it gives me a good idea of how heavy it is. Now that it's dry and it's still longer. So we're going to go through and remove some of this weight so it doesn't lay completely flat. And I'm going to actually start connecting a little bit more in front of the ear. One of the things that I don't want to see happen is these pieces drop down and kind of hang over. So little by little, I'm going to connect more and more of the hair. That way he doesn't have to worry, Brian doesn't have to worry if he walks out on a windy day, the whole haircut falling apart and having these stringy pieces hanging over. It'll always be in place. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of just take a higher section up than what we had before, and start to blend this hair over here by just using the guide underneath and cutting that. Okay, and combing it all over, kind of just seeing how it lays. Now I'm going to go through and cut the top a little bit shorter. I'm actually going to cut an angle more like this, so it's longer in the front, shorter in the back, and we'll kind of just play with it. I'm going to take it down a little bit, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more, but I'm going to basically see how the style progresses to know what's that perfect length. So now I'm going to take a section on the top, and I'm going to comb it straight up. And this is the part that's obviously the longest, so it's going to be the heaviest. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off right there. And work my way towards the crown. Okay, and last section, pulling it up, kind of seeing how it looks. So you can see it's already a lot lighter. It looks a lot better. I'm going to take the next section over, and then I'm going to over direct this section up using that section I just cut as my guide, so we're all even. Okay, there's the top. And just working my way back towards the crown. And again, you can just see it's already so much lighter. So we might not need to go shorter, we might. Let's just keep dressing the top, and we'll take a look at it and decide if we do want to go a little shorter on top or if that's a good length. So the next section, I'm going to comb that up. there's my guide. And basically just combing this hair back. And working my way back to the crown. And again, maintaining this kind of angle here. I do like the length here at the front. It gives us that ability to move it around, so we're going to keep it a little bit longer on the front. And now we're going to take this last section and cut into the top as well. There's our guide. Okay, and working my way back towards the crown. Okay, so now I'm just going to cross-check it by working, that was vertical sections, now I'm going to take horizontal section, basically just go the opposite way. And make sure it's all even. And working my way back. Okay, and now I'm going to cross-check the left side of the top. And then of course I'll do the right side. And that's where we're going to check for the corner on the right side. We probably have a corner over there that we may need to soften up a little bit. So we'll take a peek at that corner. And there's actually a corner over here as I start to get to the back. There's a corner over here. I'm just going to chip into it so it's not so heavy. Okay, so now we're going to have a corner through here, and that's where we want to address basically this corner so that it's not super heavy and hanging in his face or hanging down the side. There it is right there. So you can see the corner right there. We're going to go ahead and chip into that corner a little bit. So it's not a solid hard line, it's kind of just broken. Kind of chip into that corner a little bit, making it a little bit softer. Okay, and follow it all the way around. And one more last section right here. Okay. And then that corner we kind of addressed from the ear back. So now what I want to do is this hair here, I've got to figure out a good distance of length that it still dresses back, but it doesn't hang over if it falls through. So right now we're good as far as the top of the ear. I'm going to start to work my way forward a little bit and slowly chip away this corner, which was created by the disconnection, and kind of just see how that lays. Okay, and then I'm going to do a little bit further. There's just another little corner right there. And then I'm going to kind of play with it, kind of see how it lays. It definitely is a lot lighter. And I'm going to also address the top a little bit more square too. We're going to do a couple things so that Brian has the ability to wear it in a couple different ways. So I'm going to, as we've taken this down, address this front corner a little bit more. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to comb it forward. Okay, and this is, you can see where all the length is. And we're going to basically comb it forward. And right here, we're going to go through and just strengthen up that line. We're going to work our way around. So that it blends in with the side. Okay? So now, he's not going to dress it this way, he's not going to wear it this way, but this allows us to lighten up the front even more so that it doesn't get heavy. And then we're going to go through and just kind of layer it up a little bit on the front as well. just chipping into the outline so we can break into that, make it a little bit softer. And now here's where I'm going to layer it. We've created a corner now that we've just pulled it straight forward. And going to go in and just, there's the corner right there, break into that corner a little bit. Again, this is just going to make it a little bit lighter. So that it doesn't lay super heavy. Now what we're going to do is just visually make sure it all lays in nice and smooth. So as you can see, the texture right here, this is where he has a cowlick. So I'm just going to break in, use just the very tip of my scissors to kind of blend that cowlick in. You know, with a cowlick, it doesn't matter how many times you try and blend it with your fingers in a perfectly straight line. The hair is moving in so many different directions, it doesn't always look like it's a perfectly straight line. So you have to adapt at that particular point and basically chip into the cowlick so that it does blend into the shape. If you were to comb that cowlick through, or if you were to comb this hair through, it wouldn't be a perfectly straight line like it was before when we actually cut it. But perfectly straight lines and cowlicks translate to unperfectly straight lines just because of the cowlick. So now at that particular point, you have to just chip into the hair to create that shape, kind of finish eyeballing it. And so he's got a couple cowlicks back here. And so I'm just freehanding, basically freehanding meaning I'm not using a hand to hold the hair. Just going in and chipping, creating a shape, kind of sculpting the hair through. Okay, and I'm just addressing these cowlicks here. So that way, if the wind blows, if things move around, no matter what the cowlick's doing, that shape is already cut in there. So I'm just going to keep working at them freehand. And I'm just kind of sculpting the shape using the very tips of my scissors so that no matter what the cowlick does, it actually lays visually perfect, even though it might not lay technically perfect, technically meaning if I were to use my fingers and comb it straight out, it wouldn't be a perfectly straight line. But you know, the technique again is just one thing. It's one thing to have your haircut technically perfect. It's another thing to have it visually look good. You know, it doesn't matter if your hair is technically perfect, but it doesn't look good. You want the haircut to visually look good. So you got to use a combination of both the technique and be visual with the cut and kind of address. In this case, we're addressing cowlicks so that as they stick out in the directions they stick out, they won't stick out past the shape of the hair because I'm basically chipping into them to make sure they don't grow out that way, or they don't stick out that way. Okay, so then I'm gonna just make sure again there's another corner right there, and the reason we want to get rid of these corners, I mean, it's so small, but corners are what create weight. That's what's going to create the top of his head to be heavy and lay flat instead of lay with a little bit of volume. We don't want it to be you know, plastered against his head all flat because it's so heavy. Okay, so again, now I'm just being visual. So what I want to do is I want to take a look in the mirror, kind of see how the hair is lined. If the wind was to blow, you know, keep in mind if the wind was to blow, would he be able to just kind of push his hair back with his hands and then it goes back into place? And in this particular case, that's yes. Or if before we blend it in, was it going to hang? You know, I always see these guys that have kind of longer hair on top, shorter on the sides, and it's only because of the product they use, the gels, that the hair stays up here. But the minute they go and the wind blows, they have all this dangling hair all over the place, and the shape is lost. Now, in many cases, maybe that's on purpose. The guy wants it that way. But usually, if somebody dresses their hair with gel all up and then it falls later, it's not because they wanted it to fall. So in that particular case, you definitely want to blend it in. If they're not looking for the hair to fall the way they're going to wear it because they're gelling it up, then you might as well blend it so that it never does fall. And so that's what we're doing here is we've gone through, we've blended. This length will never fall past down on the sides. So it makes it easy to dress and style. So now I'm just going through and visually making sure everything's laying perfectly. And then I'm going to start to rotate Brian so that we can kind of see how not only does it look good from a front perspective, but that it looks good from a profile perspective as well. So just look at the final last corners of where there's corners and address those issues there. So there's a corner here in the back. Okay, and so again, this way it looks good from profile. It's kind of going back to that story I shared earlier. When I'm in the grocery store, and yeah, the hair looks good possibly from the front because that's how the guy could see his hair, but what he doesn't realize is how it looks from the back. And so I want to make sure that when the client dresses their hair in the front, the back is going to do what it needs to do as well, because it's hard to see the back of the hair, so it's important that the haircut actually lays the way it's supposed to lay back here so that they don't have to worry about it. Okay, again, just kind of addressing visually, looking at the mirror and addressing the calyx back here. So I'll kind of take a peek in the mirror and kind of see where I see the calyx, and then I just kind of chip into them. Okay, and then just looking again at the profile, I'm going to flatten out the occipital bone a little bit more. Again, the occipital bone is something that we want to flatten out. And so as you progress through the haircut, be sure to turn your client sideways so that you can see the profile of the occipital bone and see, could you keep taking it down. It's typically a bone that nobody wants to accentuate. It's usually a bone that everybody wants to flatten. So it's a good idea as you're wrapping up the haircut to take a peek at it one more time to make sure it looks as flat as possible. Okay, then I want to see how the back looks. Make sure that the back lay is nice and even. And then we'll turn the client around to the other profile to make sure it looks good from this side. Okay, and once you've addressed the profile in the back, then you know the shape works in every direction. So no matter what angle someone's looking at Brian, the haircut is addressed appropriately for each angle. Okay, so now what I want to do is put in a little bit of product. So right now the hair is kind of staying the way we want it to stay, but he's also just sitting here. He's not moving, and I want to dress it a little bit more. So we're going to put a little bit of a pomade. I like to use this clay here because it's a drier product versus a gel. A gel typically makes the hair look wet, and in this particular case I don't want the hair to look wet. I want it to look dry. And pomade isn't something like it's not going to make it hard like a gel. So the hair will still have some movement, but it will help assist the hairstyle in staying in place. So I'm just going to kind of work it in with my fingers first. Kind of placing the hair where I want to see it, over on this side where the part is, and kind of bring it down and work the product in through the top. And right now I like how the hair swoops over, kind of taking this crown area, making it a little bit more flatter but a little bit more volume here in the front. And you can kind of just play with that volume, of course, depending on who it is. Some people like the volume a lot higher, some people like it a lot smaller, or a lot lower, less volume. But I think definitely flat is not the way to go. I don't like it to be completely flat. So it can be, you can definitely play with it. And but right now, since we've removed so much of the length on the top, we do have that volume up here to be able to swoop to the side, kind of have that flexibility. He can wear it with a lot of volume, or he doesn't have to. So on that note, basically as a recap, what we did is we wanted to keep the top part for later. We wanted to save that for later. So we sectioned it off, addressed the sides and the back using vertical sections. Then we took basically took scissor-over-comb, used that scissor-over-comb technique to get it nice and tight. Once we got it nice and tight to the length that we want on the sides and back, we then dropped the top to be able to start blending into the sides so that we can be able to create a haircut that can swoop over to the side, basically nice and smooth without having to worry about, you know, it falling down. We blew dry it so that it did have a little bit of volume here at the top, but it's not too long where it's going to make it heavy or hang over. So this is it. This is the final product. If you have any questions in regards to this haircut, please feel free to put them down in the comment section below. I'll be looking for your questions and I'll be happy to answer them as they come in. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more great videos, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up. All right, thank you so much.